Hey there, and welcome to the Dynamics Hot Dish Podcast, serving up stories and knowledge on Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. This is What's Hot in Dynamics. You're now joining Merlin Schweiger, Liz McGlennon, and Ashley Steiner. We got Ashley at her remote location. I feel like I should be like, Ashley, yes, we've got Ashley at the remote location reporting on site. Ashley, how are the Brewers looking?
Not good, actually, at the moment. They are down 2-0 in the bottom of the third inning. Not that I am at all watching it on the side here because it's opening day. Sorry, guys.
It's real terrible for you. I think if I cared more about baseball, I would, care more.
Well, you should care. They're playing the Twins. So, right? Rivalry.
Sure. Sounds like the Twins are winning. Yay.
Go Twins.
Although I do like that you wear your Marquette shirt. And
yes. I wanted to support your Wisconsin team. I don't have a Brewer shirt, so it's as close as I could do, and it's the right colors. I have gone to a lot of Brewers games, though, and they are a lot of fun.
They are. This is the first time. Well, yeah, obviously last year there wasn't an opening day because of COVID, but this is like the first opening day that I'm missing in like 4 years, 5 years.
Oh, really?
Or something.
Wow.
Yeah, because I'm at a remote location right now.
Yeah, I will say that tailgating at a Brewers game is a lot more fun than tailgating at a Twins game. It's not really possible.
No tailgating this year.
That's too bad.
It is. Because I wish that they could have just spaced out the
social distance tailgating.
Yeah, but they probably just don't trust people to do it. So
I was gonna say a bunch of drunk people are gonna socially distance.
Yeah. I feel like Miller Stadium had to make a rule that like you have to go in by like the 7th inning because people were just like going and not even ever going to the game and just like sitting in the parking lot and tailgating.
Yeah, I bet.
Which is like such a Wisconsin thing, like Wisconsin problem.
It is.
Like you bought tickets to the game and you're not even using them.
It's actually not even Miller Park anymore. So this year it's American Family Field. I just call it AmFam Field, or my favorite, Claims Denied Field.
That's too bad.
Thank you.
Why did they change the name?
They wanted a Wisconsin company to own the rights to the stadium, and Miller now is in Chicago. So Miller Coors.
Traitors.
I know. Nobody likes Chicago.
Obviously. Anyway, should we talk about ISVs?
We should.
Yeah, we can.
I reckon we probably should.
I know Ashley's excited for the topic.
Yeah, since I know you made a list, and as previously stated, when we were discussing this topic, I know like 3 ISVs. I can rate them highly, but I've never really been that much into ISVs as my former employer was not particularly fond of ISVs in general.
Got it. I think first you should probably tell people what ISV is, right? Because there's 2 different kinds of partners out there. You have your ISV and your VAR. In an ISV, you guys can correct me if I get this wrong, but it's an independent software vendor. Oh, okay. Whew, I got it right. Independent software vendor. I've never had to like tell people what the IS and the V stood for. So basically it's not, so you have 2 different kinds of partners where VAR will come in and actually do work implementation, work on the existing software, and ISV has an add-on or something on top of the system. And
VAR stands for value added reseller, by the way.
Yes, that one I knew. I've worked for VARs.
Sorry, continue.
No, that's all I have to say. I just think that it's important to like identify the difference in the partner world, because there are 2, but you can be both as well. Like a VAR could have ISV solutions.
It's true. So that's a good point. So ISVs are all add-ons. It's generally a product that's sitting on top of the platform in some form or fashion. So I don't know, did you order your list in like favorites?
Well, I kind of ordered it in a way of like a reason to use an ISV. So like what would be the purpose to even bring one in, right? So there's all these different kinds of situations or scenarios that happen when you're working with Dynamics that either like the basics of Dynamics doesn't fit like your need, right? It doesn't do quoting in the way that you need to do it. Or maybe there's data quality add-ons, because we all know that the the data maintenance part of Dynamics has not gotten an upgrade in a very long time. So you say it's why you would use one is really just because there's a gap and you need something to fill that gap. Those are the integrations is another one I came up with. I don't know if you guys have other reasons of why you would even explore an ISV world.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Like, it's really just filling a gap that the system, the out-of-the-box system and out-of-the-box configuration, or within like a reasonable amount of config or customization isn't going to meet your needs. And so, I mean, an internal team or a consulting team could probably build it themselves. It would just be potentially a lot of work or complexity. And so at that point, usually evaluate like what add-ons, what ISVs are an option to see, you know, if that fits your need, like that's going to potentially save you a lot of time and money than trying to build it yourselves, especially for like CPQs, like expert logics or marketing automation, like some of these more complex things that you probably don't want to reinvent the wheel and try to do it custom yourself if it's out there.
I completely agree. This is almost, like you said, it's that buy versus build mentality. And I know a lot of people love to build. Like, oh, I can customize it and make it how I want. But there's a break even at some point where somebody has already spent the time, effort, money, everything into building it. And then you can just add it on and it does everything you need versus you spending your own money, time, effort, everything to make it what you need. And a lot of ISVs you can customize to your own process, your own, that's the purpose of them. You know, it's not just, oh, you have to work the way that we intended it. It's, oh, you add it on and then make it how you need it. So there is some sort of custom ability there. So it's almost like a half build, kind of. So
yeah,
Explorlogics is a perfect example of that. That was a good one to bring up. I'm working actually on a project to implement them right now. So that's exciting. And we came to that decision of, do we buy or build? And the amount of things that Explorlogics could do, I mean, we were looking years down the road of being able to build that internally.
Ashley, do you want to explain like why you chose Explorlogics and like what functionality it's adding into your system?
Yeah, so we needed something to create quoting for our customers. We have one person that does pricing at our company. So every deal goes through one person, which is just completely overwhelming for this person. And so what Explorlogics is doing for us is putting the pricing into the hands of the salespeople. So it's kind of automating what's in the brain of the pricing person and putting it into an automated fashion where the salesperson can just upload what they need priced. It prices out the service part of it and the hardware. And then they can actually just send a quote directly from Dynamics to the customer for approval or if they need to make changes. So it creates, what I also like Explorlogics is that it actually lives outside of Dynamics. So we can just build what we need there and bring back into Dynamics what we need versus trying to build it all out into Dynamics, because sometimes the functionality just isn't that great around the products and things like that in Dynamics.
And Ashley, did you evaluate other CPQ ISVs before landing on Explorlogics?
Oh my gosh, yeah, we had a lot of options, and I wouldn't say that like there was nothing wrong with the ones we didn't choose. I mean, there's so many great options out there for CPQ company, for options out there. And even specific to our industry, we're in a really specific industry. So there's some that specialize in us. But we liked that Explorlogics had experience outside of our world, but also did work with some people inside of our industry as well.
Nice. So I recently found out and heard that Explorlogics purchased ExpertDoc. Did you know that? Yeah, I thought that was
not until the sales cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it happened in December, I want to say.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's funny because that was actually on, I put ExpertDoc as one of the top ones on my list of ISVs that I like to work with. I've worked with them before. They've completely redone their interface of like how they're, I say they have completely redone it. This was like 4 years ago. So it's not like it's new, but it's much easier to use now. They're set up to use Flow for automation rather than just workflows, which is really cool. But it's super easy to use. I mean, we had a person who was a non-tech person actually being the admin of ExpertDoc because it was that easy.
And what does ExpertDoc do, Ashley?
Oh, yeah, it's a really good question. So they create documentation. So anything that's in Dynamics, like you can create a contract proposal, quotes, and then it can take pieces from everywhere within the system where like Word templates are great, but it's hard to get pieces from different entities, and you can't make them as complex, and you can't attach them to then an email, I don't think. So ExpertDoc then also has functionality where you can add that as an attachment to an email and send it right out of the system, and that kind of thing. I think that's in the most simplest way. That's what ExpertDoc does.
They're basically like mail merge on super steroids.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone listening who doesn't know, CPQ stands for Configure Price Quote.
Oh, thank you, Marlon.
Thanks for
I'm just over here taking notes on like the acronyms.
Like, what do I need to explain further that they're talking about?
Should we talk about
like
other document management or like Esign tools then, since we're kind of on that topic? Because I think there's a lot of like comparable ISVs to ExpertDoc, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably true. ExpertDoc has, I think, a native integration to AssureSign, which is one of the integratable with Dynamics signature tools.
Have either of you used that one?
Yeah, so we used AssureSign with ExpertDoc.
Yep, and I've seen AssureSign used in my previous employer for kind of standard contracts that got sent out pretty frequently. And it manages the whole signature process pretty well, and then brings the status back to Dynamics.
And I think the more popular one that people have probably heard of is DocuSign.
Yeah, that was a very common one.
Yeah, but I don't know. I've never integrated it with Dynamics. I know you can, but I've never seen it or done it.
I've used it. Yeah, I've used it from an end user perspective, but I've never configured it. It's pretty slick. Like, it's easy to use. But like I said, I don't have any idea what it looks like from a setup perspective.
Yeah. So from a recommendation standpoint on the e-signature, there's like 5 different options. Any of them are probably good.
I have recently tried to set up Adobe Sign, and that was surprisingly more challenging than I expected. Yeah, like the solution installed incorrectly, and so I had to like rip it out and start over. It was just like a bug or like a weird thing, like a fluke. And then I don't know. I didn't spend like a ton of time on it because it was like a side project, but it was just more. I completely underestimated like the complexity or the limitations of the solution. Because I've used DocuSign, I've used AssureSign from an end user perspective, so I was picturing something similar. So again, I don't know if it was just me being dumb and not spending enough time researching it, or if it is just kind of challenging. And their documentation, the resources online are not very complete or helpful, so you don't really have anything to use as a guide to get it to work.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about the other tools. Just working with ExpertDoc, it fit the needs that we had. So I think just depending on what you're looking for, you're going to find different solutions as part of all of those tools, and you need to get the one that meets your needs. They probably all do things slightly different.
Yeah, I'm sure they all have different pros and cons, and they all cost different things too. So you really do kind of have to evaluate which one is best for your situation. I will say, going back to Adobe Sign, another challenge we ran into was like my client had team license for Adobe, but you need enterprise. So they had to upgrade their Adobe license to make it work. And that was something like they had not realized as like an additional cost.
Yeah, and if you do move forward, so you said Experlogics owns ExpertDoc, those are still 2 different licenses, even though it's the same company. So it's like it's like an ISV on top of an ISV now, which I think is weird. Yeah, so you can still buy ExpertDoc separately, and use it outside of Experlogics, but to add it into it's not part of the solution.
Well, give them time. It was only just December.
Right. I think that'll change as of this is April 2021, just for anyone who's listening in the future. They don't have a package right now, but I'm sure eventually they will.
No doubt.
Good to know.
Yeah. So some of my favorite ISVs are recruiting data, because data is such a hard thing to keep up in the system. So I've come across some tools that have been really helpful. And I said this in the beginning, it's mainly because there's not great ways to manage your data inside of Dynamics natively.
It's true.
I don't know they are moving like the duplicate detection and the merging into the new interface in this spring release coming up. but that seems so small compared to like what these other tools can do.
Well, okay, so you update the dedupe interface, but like, are they adding functionality to the duplicate detection rules? Because I sure know people want fuzzy matching, and that's not an option. So there's the deduping, but there's also the data quality of like data validation of addresses or whatever, that none of that comes out of the box. So you look for an ISV to add that functionality.
Yeah, and even things like you said, data validate or address validation, but even just populating the address as you're typing it in. You know, there are ISVs that can, as you're typing in the address on account, can, you know, autofill it, like when you're filling out websites, or making sure the email address is valid, or, you know, I mean, there's so many, or standardize your data. Like if you want everything to be like street ST or street spelled out, you know, there's all sorts of tools that can do that for you.
And one of my favorites. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. I was saying one of my favorites is Data 8. So there are a ton of data tools out there. They're just the one I worked with the most consistently. And the reason I like them is because they have a full stack of various different things that you can use. And they don't actually really, and they'll even take your data, clean it up, and push it back into your system. That's a service that they provide.
A common request.
Yeah.
I feel.
I was going to say like data augmentation or correction, I think is another thing too, of like, I frequently get asked about like integrating a DNB, or I know like Inside View and Broadlook used to be things, like I don't know if they're really around anymore, but trying to like add like data, like, okay, I have a lead, I have an account, give me more information, or help me find a new lead. And obviously LinkedIn now has a role to play in that too, but I guess I don't consider that an ISV. But I think that's a third kind of data category that ISVs can fill.
It's kind of true. And I guess I'll put a plug in here to point out that, well, Dynamics out of the box as it stands doesn't have much to help with data like merging, aggregation, cleanliness. I think that's where Microsoft is trying to position Customer Insights. And my assumption is that's why Customer Insights falls under the Dynamics brand, even though from a technical perspective, it doesn't really like it's not leveraging the same base technology. But with Customer Insights, you can do all of that fuzzy matching, deduplication, augmenting with external data sources. Like I think that's where Microsoft is kind of offloading that functionality to is into Customer Insights.
That's interesting, because I always kind of wondered how Customer Insights, and we should probably save this for another podcast, but I mean, because you brought it up, like I always wondered how that fit into the stack, right? So you have Power Platform, you have Dynamics. I mean, how does just an everyday admin use it versus like there are data scientists that I think could probably do amazing things with it. But that's like a real life example, because, you know, it is the native functionality is lacking inside of Dynamics.
What other tools have you guys used from a data perspective?
So I've never used Melissa, but I've heard wonderful things about it. I would say it's a very similar tool to Data 8. I know that they do a lot of data validation in regards to addresses, and it can sit right on top of your system. But I've never actually used them, but I've heard great things about them. I've looked at them before.
I've seen them implemented mostly for address validation in the past, and they seem to do a great job.
I've heard good things too, but I don't have any personal experience.
Yeah.
What other ones?
Any other data?
Well, it's funny you brought up LinkedIn, because I didn't think of LinkedIn as an ISV, but it really is. I guess when you think about it, it's something that integrates or sits on top of the system.
Yeah.
So that one, actually, I didn't add it to my list, but it's in every environment I've ever worked on. There's some sort of integration with LinkedIn. And I also consider LinkedIn to be one of the best sources of data, like especially personal data about a person, because they're updating it themselves. Whereas if you go to a Hoover's, a DMB, things like that, it's usually 6 to 8 months old, because they're having to aggregate it and make phone calls and things like that. I have seen an integration with Hoover's or DMB, and one of the things that it's the same company. What people really like about it is that you can get like that DNB number. So every company has like that unique number, and it really helps identify like with duplicates where to merge them. These are all things that are hard, though, I think, on an existing database. You know, I don't want to say it's easy to clean up a system, like before, as you're launching, like when you're implementing, when you're like taking the data from somewhere else and in Excel. But it's really hard to do any of this on an existing database.
It does increase the complexity. Yes. But to your point, if you can get that number, which is called the DUNS number,
Thank you.
into the system on all of your various accounts, that would help reduce duplication.
How about you, Liz? Any other data tools that you
Not that I've personally used. I guess I've like, it's been a while, but I used to hear people talk about Trillium a lot. Is that still around? And have either of you worked with it?
I've never worked with them. I've done like demos and coding and things like that, but we never actually moved forward by purchasing them.
No, I haven't either. I know a few years ago, they were sort of like the gold standard, like that was the premium option. But I don't know anybody that actually went for the premium option.
No, it was too expensive. Yeah, like I've seen demos, but I've never actually like seen it implemented on my projects because it was always so expensive.
That's so funny because I didn't want to say that, but that was the reason we never could move forward with them, is they were, you know, out of our price range.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Can I bring up a no-brainer, what I think is a no-brainer ISV?
Sure.
If you need to do sales tax, Avalara.
Sure.
Like hands down, no-brainer. If anybody ever says, I need to calculate sales tax, I stop listening. I don't want to know anything else about your requirements for sales tax. The answer is Avalara. Their product will do it. Moving on.
So I agree. I 100% agree. But I do feel like sales tax comes up more for an ERP implementation than a CRM implementation from my perspective.
Generally, but I feel like there's a lot of overlap into your quoting, right?
Sure.
Because if you're building your quotes, if you've got salespeople building quotes and you need to have sales tax, and you probably can't be distributing quotes to customers that don't include their sales tax that they're going to have to pay. Like, oh, here's your quote. It's $5,000. It's actually $5,500 because I didn't add sales tax.
Yeah, yeah. And Avalara just has a great booth if you're ever at a trade show.
That's true too.
They have good giveaways. I think I have so many giveaways from their booths.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's all orange.
Yes. And beach themed.
You can't miss it.
And they used to give out margaritas.
Liz, you would remember that part.
Of course. Actually, I think the picture of Merlin and I on our website is at the Avalara booth, if I'm not
Definitely
wrong.
wearing Avalara shades.
Yeah, we were.
That's awesome.
So they have good swag.
Yeah.
They do.
Sorry, that was my plug for absolutely. If that business requirement comes up, just don't even try.
But I think that's a really good point, because like there are some obvious leaders in certain needs, right? Like Avalara leads in the sales tax, but in the other areas like data quality, you know, I think of CPQ, there are just so many options out there that, you know, don't stop just because you find the first one sometimes. Like you really do need to search. The one that I think of a lot is mapping, because Dynamics does not do any sort of mapping natively. They have that fun little
Well, they have Bing maps.
Yeah. They have a fun little Bing map that shows you exactly where it is, but not like how to get there, or you can't map multiple on the same Bing map. So it's cool, but it's, you know. So I've worked with Easy Territory. I know you can do mapping on Power BI as well. Not that that's really an ISV, but you can do some sort of like geocoding and mapping, and you can if you're a salesperson, you can say, hey, I want to do these 10 stops. Give me my best route to get to all of these 10 stops the most quickly. And you can also geocode all of your accounts, so you can get them all on a map together and see, hey, we have more customers in this area or this area. You can also display Easy Territory maps from your CRM data on your website, which I think is kind of cool. So
I've heard really good things about that one from people. Yeah. Yeah.
I really like working with them.
So I will plug, I guess, a Power Pack, because I know Power Objects has a Power Map, and I also used to work there. And so I have a lot of experience with the Power Packs, but not with other ISVs because we had our own. And I know Merlin referred to that, but I feel like we have to talk about Power Packs at some point in time.
It was on the list.
Yeah,
Actually,
they are an option, and what I like about them is that it's a la carte, and so like it's just one little piece of functionality that's pretty affordable. And it's just pretty like plug and play. You can configure it if you need to, but it's not like you're getting this whole suite of functionality. Like if you just need one thing, you can just buy one Power Pack, or you could buy 20, if you wanted to. And so I like that it's kind of, you can tailor it to whatever you're looking for. And I think they're affordable. Like it's good functionality for like the SMB market that's affordable.
Mm-hmm. I agree, because what I liked about using Power Packs, I haven't used them in a couple years, but it was whether you were a customer or not, you could still use them.
Yeah, you don't have to be. Power Objects does not have to be your partner. Absolutely not.
Yeah, and like you said, like you just get these little bite-sized pieces, like a web form. That's all you need. You don't need a whole marketing suite. I just need to be able to capture leads from my website. So you're taking just those small little pieces. I will also say some things about the Power Pack is they tend to sometimes be better than like the native functionality in Dynamics. So even though Dynamics can do something, sometimes the Power Pack is built better. So, I mean, it kind of puts it out there that, hey, Microsoft is either catching up to the Power Packs or just use the Power Pack because it's better functionality for you.
Yeah, there's a lot that I've heard that like, oh, why is that still around? Like the editable grids or the global search or the surveys, because all of that is native functionality now. But I think they're around because they do, even if it's not a lot, like very different, like I still think they're a little bit more robust or enhanced than maybe the out of the box functionality is.
And surveys are kind of difficult to do with that. You have to use Forms Pro now, don't you? So, and if you don't know Forms Pro, that could be difficult.
Yeah, Power Survey, and now it's Power Survey Plus. Like that was the first add-on I ever used because we came off SurveyMonkey because we wanted something to integrate with CRM. And so like it's a classic Power Pack, but it's still great.
And I feel like the maps kind of falls into that same category of like, it's a good solid set of functionality. If you need more advanced stuff, like going back to easy territory, like I've heard really great things about their ability to do like really complex, like sales territory mapping and like automatically updating things based on territory changes. Like if you need that, you'll definitely need easy territory. But if you just want to like put a list of records on a map and then like get directions, you can do that with the Power Pack.
What I always liked about the easy territory was like just to play with the data. Like you'd go from like a heat map to pins. I mean, because it totally changes your perspective on what you're trying to look for. So, and the flexibility of it, I mean, you could build whatever you wanted in regards to map. You could even just section something out and say, only count this. It's easy territory is really cool. I got lost in it several times because I was like, oh, what does it look like if I do this? So.
That's kind of hilarious.
So can I bring up the last category that I have on my list that we haven't really talked about yet, which I think is a big one? Marketing automation. And I think it's also shifted recently with the new marketing app and all the improvements Microsoft is putting in to out of the box functionality. But like, there's still plenty of marketing automation ISVs out there.
And I would say it depends on your requirements because the marketing app is really helpful for people that are also going to do events. That's where it really leads and drives a little bit. If you are only looking for like an email campaign type of tool, it might not fit your needs because they're still building it. It's still growing. It's not, Click Dimensions has been around longer than I've been in this space. So they've obviously had a lot of time to perfect their product. The marketing app came out like 3-4 years ago. So it's just, so it's just tenure in the space, right? You have more time to develop it. So Click Dimensions is one I've worked with. Awesome.
Yeah.
I've
That's
also worked
definitely
with
the top. I would say from a marketing ISV, I think Click Dimensions is one of the most popular ones.
Yeah.
Especially for small and medium. Like I know Microsoft says Adobe is their enterprise recommendation. But again, I've never actually gotten to work with Adobe marketing that integration because it's so expensive. Like I've never had a client big enough to want to pay for it.
Yeah, I've never worked somewhere big enough for that.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like only the largest of large companies use Adobe, and I'm sure it can do everything under the sun, but for most people, like Click Dimensions has most of the functionality you need. I think I like your characterization, Ashley, of the new marketing app. Is like it's really helpful for somebody who does events, because I feel like they built that app with marketing to existing customers in mind. Like even to the point where it focuses more on marketing to contacts. Like it doesn't really leverage leads at all. So if you're doing a bunch of marketing for like lead gen, Dynamics marketing isn't really designed for that. It's more designed for maintaining and like selling more into your existing customer base. And I think it does that really well.
I would completely agree with that, because when I was implementing it, that was the biggest gap in the tool, was that you couldn't email to leads. And everyone's like, I want to email to my leads, but you have to have a contact associated with them. So it's just...
Have they changed that now? Like, isn't that possible now?
They'll tell you can email to leads as long as you assign a contact to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, and this is probably a topic for a different podcast, but like, is Microsoft trying to change the way we think about leads?
I think that's a great question, because every presentation I've ever had from Microsoft on the marketing app, people have done so much to it that you wouldn't even recognize it's the marketing app anymore. Like they want you to take it and then build all this automation and restructure your process to meet, you know what I mean? So it's not meant to be, here's how you use it. It's how could you use it and like develop it and keep it going. So
Interesting.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Have you guys used any other marketing automation ISVs?
HubSpot?
Yeah, that's common.
Yeah, I would. HubSpot's a great tool. Like I don't want to ever like say anything like, oh my gosh, it's not great. HubSpot's an awesome tool, but HubSpot's a CRM on its own.
Yeah.
So they have an entire CRM platform built into it. So I would say it's more difficult to integrate into an existing CRM if you're using Dynamics or, you know, the Power Apps, whatever, because you're going to have to duplicate your CRMs in 2 different places and keep them up to date. And that's really difficult to do. HubSpot, I think, in my opinion, is just better used on its own.
It's probably
and the integration point, creating the integration between the two is really difficult.
Really? Okay.
I feel like another popular request is I just want to send blast emails. And so then you're looking at like Constant Contact or MailChimp. There is a Power Pack for that, but also there's a Power Automate connector for MailChimp. So you could just build an integration with MailChimp.
I think there's some sort of connector to Constant Contact too. I think I've heard of that. I've not used it, but I would imagine that could be an option. I've
searched for one. Okay. It's not there by that name. I'm sure you could still do it, but Constant Contact does not appear to have a native Power Apps adapter, whereas MailChimp does.
Okay, that's good to know.
That's actually really cool, because that's a lot of, like, when I work with salespeople for the first time, the first thing that they say is, great, these are all my contacts. How can I email them? I'm like, from Outlook. And you get no recording.
Technically, you can out of CRM,
but trying to teach salespeople to do the same thing in 2 different places is just a different conversation for different podcasts.
Right.
So the one thing that I added to my list that I think a lot of people forget about, and I don't know, I guess they're not technically ISVs, are the industry accelerators that Microsoft offers. So, you know, they're not, obviously it's Microsoft given, it's actually built into the tool, but it does technically sit on top of your existing environment.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Ashley. That was my last thing, was to ask about like vertical or industry specific ISVs or those accelerators in general. Yeah. Because I think that's a whole other category.
It really is, but it's just as cool. I mean, the fact that Microsoft is coming out with this kind of like template of, hey, we know that nonprofits in theory run very similar. Here's, you know, fundraising already built in, campaigning, you know, it's built for your industry. I think that's really cool. And I hope that more of them come out, because I think that it'll be easier to implement over the years. So.
Yeah. And the new model that they're using for those accelerators, I think, is better than the old model, because they used to have a nonprofit accelerator like, I don't know, 10 years ago. And it was kind of trash. But the new accelerators, it was trash.
Isn't the first attempt at everything kind of trash? Remember the first marketing app?
Man.
We're not going to talk. We're not going to talk
about a nightmare.
We're not talking about MDM. That's not going to happen.
That was rough.
Yeah, but it was like they had this huge gap of time, and then they're like, oh, and also now we're doing this again. So I feel like they've figured it out. The idea is focus on the data model first, and then expand to functionality. And I think they're taking a good approach with it this time.
Yeah, I think it's really cool just to find something that's unique to your business as well. Because sometimes people look at Dynamics and they're like, great, but how could I use that for the way that we work? And this kind of gives you that framework of here's how you set up your data, here's how you can use the functionality. I think it's really cool, a really cool thing they're doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Any final thoughts? I think we're pretty mumuch at time.
I have one, and it's kind of around a best practice, I guess, when selecting an ISV. I think because of the frequency of our updates these days, it can be challenging for ISVs to guarantee that their product will always work without any issues when we get a new update. So I would just make sure that they have just a quality release plan and release notes, and that the ISV is kind of doing their due diligence and best practice from a design and testing and staying on top of things perspective. Because I've seen a lot of clients, it's not so much like the SaaS ISVs, but where you buy an accelerator, not a Microsoft accelerator, but something like that for an industry. And then you put in the managed solutions, but then it's not maintained, or it's not updated quickly enough to keep up with the updates if you're online. And so I would just caution, I guess, anyone that's selecting maybe not a well-known one or a startup, just vet it before you put it into your system, and you're kind of stuck with this add-on functionality that maybe isn't gonna work in the long run, or work with updates.
That's a really good point, because one of the things that I always ask for when I'm in the sales process with an ISV is I ask them for their roadmap. And if they're like, oh, we don't have it quite identified, I'm like, great, let's see your roadmap for the last 12 months. What did you do? Because maybe they just don't have it documented yet. They're working on it. I always like to make sure that they're continuously updating, not even keeping up with the Microsoft technology, but just that they themselves are improving upon themselves.
Yeah, they're going to take feedback from their customers and continue to enhance their product. Yeah, and think about what is their support, what guidance, Click Dimensions has a whole online learning portal, but what sort of training or self-paced resources do they provide to help you to be self-efficient, where you don't have to rely on them to get it working, and you have some sort of resources to get it set up, maintain it, support it yourself, but then also they're available to help, whether that's free or paid services, whatever, but they also have a team to support you if you need help getting their solution to work. And Ashley, I know you just went through Expertlogics training too, and I've also seen other people go through that. So I think, Click Dimensions is a great example. Expertlogics is a great example of ISVs that do training. They have a lot of learning resources. They have a lot of support. And I think that's really important to be successful with an ISV product.
I agree. I like that customer portal that they have.
Yeah.
So just one final question for you, Ashley. How are the brewers doing now?
My computer died. They were down 2-1 last time I checked.
Right.
But I did make a face earlier in this because Christian Yelich got hit by a pitch, and that makes me angry.
Fair enough. My last plug was going to be, if any ISVs are listening to this and you'd like to sponsor future episodes of Dynamics Hot Dish, no, I'm just kidding. We don't take sponsorships. I know it may sound like we were sponsored by some of these products. We are accepting no funds for these listeners.
It's all experience working with them.
It's all experience.
Yeah.
All right. Is that it? Okay, that's it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you for listening to the Dynamics Hot Dish podcast. For additional content and previous episodes, check out our website at dynamicshotdish.com, follow us on Twitter at dynamicshotdish, and subscribe to our podcast for notifications. Thanks. See you next time.